In this episode, we speak to James Mirfin, the Global Head of Risk and Identity Solutions at Visa. I've been really looking forward to this episode because James has not only achieved amazing things in his career, which we'll talk through, but he's just a wonderful person with it as well. I hope you enjoy this episode. It was a pleasure to record it. My name's Liam Chennells and I'm the CEO of Detected. And in the Not What I Expected podcast, we're going to be talking about the leaders in the world of payments and risk and their amazing journeys to becoming the people they are today.
Getting prepped, I had CNN on. She goes, and I heard this voice and I recognised it. I turned around, she took a photo of me on the screen in the hotel room. I was like, that's cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, it was nice. That was cool. He's like, I'm so proud. I was like, thanks.
We can get started. So I am, I say to most people that I'm excited about this episode, but I'm actually really excited about this one because we've met through work, but get on in a way that's more than work now as well, which is super cool. But I say so often, and you're going to have to get used to me being really nice, by the way. I don't know, it's a really hard thing to do. But there's people that in the work that I do genuinely inspire me and their stories inspire me. And I just want you to hear yours because I also know your wife and I want them to hear you tell your story because no one gets the chance to hear what you do they?
No. And they don't understand what I do.
Exactly. So we're going to do it. So I'm going to start with some quick fire questions. First up, if you could have any job in the world for one day, what would it be and why? I think I know where this is going.
It's funny, I would have said a Formula One driver, but I know one of your other guests said that, so I can't say that. I think I'd be a rock star and I'd walk out on stage and just in front of a massive stadium, just play a song that the whole place sings along to.
Everybody's moving around. Yeah,
I haven't got the skill to do that. I'll never have that opportunity. And we always have this debate with some of my friends about if you could be a rock star or you could be a top athlete, running out, scoring a winning goal, which one would be better? Which one would have the bigger buzz? And I think just walking out on stage, being able to nail a song that everybody loves, I think that would just be a buzz. I wouldn't want to do it forever, but I think that'd be cool. One day, that'd be cool.
Love it. The best piece of advice you've ever received?
I remember once I took on a new role and I was moving into something and I was actually being put in there and the person I was working for said, you need to go into this with confidence, but not arrogance. And I kind of paused. I said, well, what do you mean? I had to really think about it. And they said, look, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be surprised that you're there. They're going to resent the fact that you're put there. They would think that they could do that role. You have to go in knowing that we've decided to put you into that role because we know you can do it. We know you're the right person for it. And you've got to have that confidence in yourself, but show up in a way that, you operate like that. And I think it was a really interesting piece of feedback because I think there is a very fine line between confidence and arrogance. I think we all like to be around confident people generally. Arrogant people, not so much. And I think, it's something I've gone back to time and time again. When you get given opportunities, sometimes I look at myself and think, how did I end up here? Yeah. And you've just got to have a level of confidence that you're there for a reason and that you can be successful. So.
Agree with that. It's a really hard line as well, especially when you're overreaching potentially in a job.
Yeah.
Amazing. What's the one thing you're really proud of?
I think my family, my kids, family broadly. I look at what they've done and who they are and how they show up, what they do. I'm just very proud of them every day. A lot of what I do is driven by them.
Yeah.
I want to give them opportunity. I want to provide for them. It's quite a traditional view of stuff, I think. But I think most proud to be my family.
What's the most ridiculous thing you believed as a child?
I shouldn't say this because kids might listen, but maybe it's believing in Father Christmas.
The
idea that this big guy could come down the chimney and deliver presents and, all that sort of stuff. I think that was probably, if I think back, because you have absolute conviction that Father Christmas is bringing presents on Christmas Eve. So, Father Christmas.
Love it. Not a unique one, by the way. That's a safe answer. So, what is it you do today? For people that may not know you, who do you work for and what is it you do? Let's start there.
Yeah. So I work for Visa. I lead the risk and identity solutions business, it's called. So it's a business unit within the value-added services business at Visa. So if you think about Visa, we've essentially got sort of three core areas. You've got the consumer payments business, you've got commercial and money movement solutions, and then you've got value-added services, VAS. VAS is the fastest growing part of Visa. We just did an investor day and we talked about this. So I think last year it was about an $8.5 billion business. Within that, you've got four core business units. You've got an advisory business. You've got acceptance solutions that works on that side of the network, issuing solutions, and then you've got risk and identity, which is the bit that I lead. And so I lead a team of people that are thinking about products and solutions to protect not only the Visa network and transactions on the Visa network, but now more broadly just payments in general, and helping financial institutions and merchants protect the payment ecosystem and try and stop fraud.
So you lead a part of a business.
Part of a business.
But the part of the business does 9.5 billion.
So VAS did, I think we said last year it was about 8.5 billion. My part, risk and identity, was last year was about 1.5 billion, growing about 20%. Big business.
Yeah. So where did you go to school? And when you were at school, did you have any idea what was coming?
No. So I went to school in Wokingham. I went to Forest Comprehensive School.
Shout out to those guys.
Yeah, Forest. That was fun times. And I had no idea, I don't think, what I was going to do. I think if I look back, if I remember thinking about like what I wanted to be when I grew up, I remember a pilot was on the list, or a police officer. Different.
Noble professions.
Yeah. And then at primary school, I went in and they did a colour vision test. And so you got the little, I think it's the Ishihara test, you flick through the book. And I remember flicking through and I was like, that's nice. And I put it down and they said, yeah, now go back now. And what can you see in that? I was like, yeah, it's pretty. Put it down. So I couldn't see any of the numbers. So I was colourblind. And so they gave you a letter and it was like, dear parent, your child was tested for colourblindness today. This is the list of things they can't do when they're older. Pilot, policeman. And I just burst into tears. I remember going home going, what's my future? And so I really had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Do you know, I had exactly the same thing. I wanted to be in the army and they told me I was colourblind.
Yeah.
I remember where I was in primary school when they told me that I couldn't do that list of jobs. That's a brutal way of telling a kid that all their hopes and dreams are dashed.
And giving it to them when they're 10 years old and put it in an envelope and let the parents have the conversation. But that was a kick in the stomach.
So then you get to secondary school. As you're getting towards the end of secondary school, were you particularly academic? Because if I think about, I'm running a business of that scale, you got to be a clever person. But like at school, did you perceive yourself as academic? Did your results say you were academic?
No, I mean, my secondary school was streamed. So they had, you were put in streams based on, I guess, results or grades or whatever. And ours was really complex. It was called Forest. It was F&O, R&E, S&T. Okay, got it. I was an F. So I was obviously, I was smart. And I remember all my school reports always said, James is really intelligent or whatever, but could work harder, could apply himself more. So it was always a could do more in the school reports. Grades were always okay, reasonable, middle of the road, I think. Yeah. I wouldn't say I worked super hard. If I think about me compared to my brother, I always feel sorry for him because he really worked very, very hard. And I think I worked less than he did. And I always got slightly better grades often, through tests and stuff. And I remember when I was studying for my GCSEs and A-levels, my mum still has these photos at home. There's one where I was sat in a hammock in the garden or lying in the hammock with a book, asleep on the hammock with a suntan mark where I was supposed to be studying. And there was another one where I was sat on a picnic table asleep. So I wasn't the most studious kid.
Do you know, for a lot of people that I've spoken to doing this, the same report card emerges. Like, capable but must try harder. And I actually think there's an efficiency. The whole work smart not hard thing. And I actually think most people in school that had the report card, like, great but must try harder. It's like must try harder by the standards that you're setting for how people learn. Yeah. But people that just think a slightly different way and can achieve the same results is the people that go on to do good things, I think. Yeah.
It's funny, I've looked back on it and wondered why I didn't apply myself more, study harder.
Where was the forcing function?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my parents always wanted us to do well and to try hard, but they were never, like tiger parents pushing us and encouraged us, gave us opportunity. I mean, talking about my dad, but he left school with 1 O-level. So he always wanted me to do more than he did or be able to do more than he did. But he was never pushing that hard. They'd always encouraged us to try and study. But I just don't know. I think I knew I wanted to go to university and he wanted me to go to university because I was the first one in the family. So he was always trying to create that opportunity. But it wasn't like I was shooting for Oxford or Cambridge. I was just wanted to go to uni. And when I applied, I applied all around the coastline of the UK because I wanted to go surfing. Probably not the right driver for which university to choose.
But you'd already decided before you wanted to go somewhere that was surfing that you wanted to go to uni. So uni was first, surfing was
I think
second, because you could have gone surfing anywhere.
I think the uni thing was, I think my dad, that was one thing that he really wanted to create the opportunity for us to go to university, because I think the thinking he had was he didn't do that. I don't think he could have done that or had that opportunity to go. And he saw, as he was moving through his career, the kids that had come through with degrees just had that more chance. Yeah. And so I think it's always been this philosophy for him that, look, if I can give you as much opportunity as I can, then you can embrace that and go and do more. And I've kind of got the same drilled into me, I think, with my kids. It's like, I can get you so far.
Yeah.
If you're motivated, you do the rest.
So what did you study at uni?
So I started off... I
love this. Started off...
I started off doing accounting and finance. I thought, that's good. I'll be an accountant, or I could go and do something like that.
Yeah.
I did, I think, the first semester and realised...
And were caught on your hammock.
No, I was actually... Because it was a shared first year with like the business degrees and stuff. So, you were doing accounting, marketing, legal, law.
Oh, really?
So it was a shared undergrad sort of first year. And I think
that's changed now, right? Because in the US, that's still the case. You can go in and do 4 or 5, but in the UK now, you focus straight away, right?
I don't know. I think it was within the business school. I remember whether you did marketing, accounting, business studies, whatever, international, but they were all pretty much the shared first semester or first year.
Nice.
And so after a semester, I thought, I'm really not going to be an accountant. It's just not me. And so I went and switched to business studies. And I think actually part of that was, I don't know what I want to do, and accounting's putting me down a path, and so I'd rather just open that up and think about it.
Yeah. And at the time, like now, that feels like a big decision, but at the time you're 18, you're like, I'll try business. There's not much more to it, is there?
No, just open it up, and I knew I'd done part-time jobs, and I knew that I liked working with people. I worked in a pub. I did sales in a bike shop, and I was actually quite good at selling. Yeah. And so I just thought I'll open up and see what comes.
Epic. So then, by the time you get to the end of uni, I find that so many people, when they're in uni, they don't really think too much about what's coming after that until about 3 months towards the end. Did that happen for you?
I think because I did the business degree. That's the other reason I changed to business. It was a sandwich course, so you could do a third year where you went out into industry. And I really liked that idea. So for my third year, I joined digital equipment, as it was, which got acquired by Compaq, so IT, company.
Right, okay.
They had I think it was a sales and marketing assistant placement. So sounds great. So I moved back to my parents' place, went and worked for DEC, as it was at the time. And I joined this global account team. I think I was the first placement student they'd had, and they weren't quite sure what to do with me. It was like, I think they were great. And honestly, I learned so much in that year, but it was, these global account managers managing companies. Like it was GEC was the account. So it was Marconi Avionics and all of these, they were selling supercomputers to these engineers that were building missile guidance systems. And they just wanted me to help them think about how they could grow the business and what could we do creatively to try. And I was like, okay, great. And they're like, look, you can have some budget, just help us with ideas. And so, I realised quite quickly our sales is not a bad spot to get into. Like these guys were driving nice company cars, they were getting to travel, spending time with customers, doing big deals and stuff, and that was great. And I remember they said, look, we want to do some sort of marketing event, and because Marconi had all these sites around the UK, can you do something creative to get us out there? I was like, I'm not a marketing person, trust me. In my career, people told me, you're not a marketeer. Stay away from that. But I ended up buying a coach, like an old bus, and we took it to a Coachworks place somewhere in the Midlands, and they basically cut this thing down the middle. They put hydraulics in it so that you could fold out the side of the platform and extend it out. We fitted it with these, I guess, supercomputer things and put like silicone graphics, it was at the time. We put all this funky futuristic branding on it. It was something like The Future Is Now or something corny like that. And we drove it around the UK. And so I got to travel around the UK with them. And so basically it was our way just to get onto these sites. And all these people came out and just walked around our mobile exhibit. And it was brilliant. It was honestly, it was so fun. I think I spent £500,000 on this thing. They trusted this, whatever I was at the time, 20-year-old, to go and do that. It was brilliant. So yeah, I think I did that, and I realised like sales is probably a good spot to go into. So as I started thinking about my final year, then I was looking for graduate sales roles just as a starting point.
It's so funny that you were like, I'm not a marketeer, but the first thing I ever had a chance to do, I cut a bus in half and cut it
exactly. I know. I'm definitely not a marketeer.
Has that one of the things you said there was that you were given the space to do that. Do you think that, and this is a leading question, but it's intentionally a leading question, give like younger people in organisations the freedom to do stuff because they might come up with something great?
Yeah, I do. I think I've been very lucky in my career that people have given me opportunity to do that in space. And I actually struggle in an environment where you're micromanaged and someone's really prescriptive about what and how they want you to do things. And I do. I mean, one of the things I love about my job is actually getting out and spending time with people in the team, early, coming out of university, young, new ideas. Like, you've got to give them the space, and you've also got to give them the ability to get their ideas to the people that can make decisions, because quite often it gets filtered all the way through. So how do you create those environments? It's hard, but
that's an interesting concept, that the core of what people in junior roles say doesn't reach the people that can actually make the decisions. That's I've never really thought too much about that dynamic.
I think it depends. If they've got big ideas, which would actually mean that you need to, carve out resources or give them investment, I think that gets harder to do sometimes in big organisations.
Love it. So you've realised sort of what you want to do. First couple of jobs, like moving around a bit, working it out.
Yeah, I did a graduate sales role selling IT to schools. Not that great. Had to live on patch or on territory. That didn't last very long. I really didn't enjoy that.
So what, you're just walking into reception at these schools,
getting appointments and trying to tap into their IT budget and just kit out a computer.
So
lab.
the IT teacher at a school is the person that you're selling stuff to.
And then you might have to go and present to the headmaster or headmistress. And
so you're basically back at school.
Back at school. I loved it. I worked with some great people there, but I could tell it just wasn't what I wanted to do. I wasn't living where I wanted to live. Yeah. Went off and tried to do a .com startup with a friend. Wrong timing. There was very, very short period of time dabbled in that, and then
was this when you wrote your crypto prediction, or was that at uni?
That was at uni. That was when I wrote the Beginner's Guide to Money Laundering. Yeah, I missed that boat.
So you do your .com startup. What was it?
We had a couple. We had one which was as you do. Don't be focused if you're going to try and start doing something. One was about. It was pre-Amazon, and so it was around like university books. And the concept was, when you go off to university, they give you this reading list. The first day you go to the bookshop on campus, it's all fixed. You pay a fortune for your books. And so it was about actually digitizing all that e-commerce before e-commerce was a thing, really. And the idea that you'd get into whichever university on whichever course, and then they'd be able to, you could order your books online, get them shipped to you. You could start reading before school starts and all that kind of stuff. So there was a whole academic backing to it. Yeah. So we had that one. And I think something called Amazon popped up, so that wasn't.
So the timing was like that bad?
Yeah, it was literally around. I think it was pre-Amazon, and then all of us, literally e-commerce took off and went crazy. But there was a lot of other things to it. We called it research. There was research pieces to it. It was really. I just look back at it. It was still. I think it was an interesting idea at the time, and we got a lot of support for it. And then the other one was called afterthepub.com. And it was
sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't get more different. But it was. But
also, this could go in so many directions.
Yeah, no, but it was. This was, when was this? This would have been 99, 2000. So you're talking just about smartphones, feature phones. Yeah. But the idea was, when you're out in a town and you want to go out after the pub, how do you find out what's available? Can you get ticketing access?
Never has there been a more people in their early 20s trying to make money born out of frustration business idea.
Yeah, it's like, where do I go? How do I get in? Will we get in? What's the dress code? Can you surface up offers and all that sort of stuff? So there was just a couple that we played around with and didn't do that for very long.
So then you find a job.
Yes.
Because you're like, I'm an entrepreneur, but it's hard.
No, I realised I wasn't an entrepreneur. And then I went back and then I joined Reuters in a sales role. And
So what was that, in London?
That was in London. Yeah, I joined.
So you just found it online?
I actually can't remember where I found. I think I did. I think it wasn't online. It was probably in the Times or Sunday Times or something graduate. It was a graduate sales role, but it was an account management role. They were setting up this new, I think they called it a customer management centre. These they were supposed to be remote account managers, but you were sitting in London and most of your clients were in London. So it was like, you do this on the phone. Or go and see them because it's a lot easier. And it was funny because I took over a portfolio of very unloved customer relationships. And so a lot of these things were on long-term contracts that were cancelled.
Yeah.
And, I pick up the phone and it's James from Reuters. They're like, from where? Wow, you called us, was kind of the response for some of those accounts.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was amazing. I managed to turn around a lot of business in there. And I realised I was actually quite good at selling.
Love it. Sales is such a fundamental part of everything.
Yeah.
I think there's an underappreciation for that. That's probably a thing we could talk about for an hour. So how long were you at Reuters? Because that must have been like, given you've tried a couple of things, right? Which is exactly what your early 20s is for. But then you found something that you're like genuinely adding value to.
Yeah.
It must have been hard to leave there. How long did you stay?
So I started in London. I did that role for a couple of years. And then I decided I wanted to go and try and work overseas with them. And so they had an office in Australia. I thought, I can go to Australia. That'd be awesome. I thought about going to Australia as a student, didn't have the money. If someone will pay me to go, that'd be amazing. And the funny thing was we were running a lot of the Asian markets out of Australia. So to go to Australia, you needed an Asian language, but they were posting for a sales role in Singapore. You didn't need an Asian language.
Okay.
I was like, that's a long way away. I'll try that. So I managed to get that job and they moved me to Singapore. One-way ticket, 2 weeks in a service department and good luck was kind of the relocation.
So how old are you here? Like 23, 24, something like that?
Yeah, 24, I think. Maybe 23. And
Bon voyage, like off you go. See
and
ya.
I figured, look, it's a one-way ticket. If I don't like it, I can pack my bags and go back.
Yeah,
So that was 2002, and I haven't moved back to the UK since. So that was the start of the journey.
Jeez. So then you're with Reuters in Singapore.
Yeah.
How was that?
That was great. It was great. I always, you take something on and then you land and then you find out a bit more about the role. You're like, I should have asked those questions in the interview. So I took over a portfolio and a sales territory where they'd had some challenges with the product. Yeah. And so I was doing a little bit of damage recovery.
So it's less, I'm glad you called.
Yeah.
We'll answer this.
Rebuilding credibility. It was a great business. It was a sort of subsidiary of Reuters. But I loved it. I mean, I was in Singapore. I was young. There was a good crowd. They actually had like I can't remember what it was, I think it was a graduate program where they'd move people around. So there was this sort of group of people that were there at the same time. And then I actually met Joe very soon after getting to Singapore. So that was amazing as well. And yeah, I just loved it. I was getting to travel around Asia, just opportunities I would never had in London.
So you're now in your mid-20s, you've met your future wife.
Yep.
You're living in Singapore. You must have felt like, life is good.
It was good.
Yeah. So when life is good like that, in your mid-20s, there is a forcing function that causes you to be somewhere different or somewhere else. What was it for you? Were you like looking for a bigger role? Like, was career a thing by that time?
It's funny, if I think back, I wanted to go somewhere else. So it was like, if I've got a chance I didn't realise, I think again, back to that question about when you were in high school, did I realise companies were going to move you around the world? No.
Yeah.
I didn't know anyone that had moved around the world. So yeah, I think initially it was a chance to go move. I was doing well in my job. And I think I realised that actually, if you're good at this stuff, you can get paid well. And that was where it's back to the question about study. I think the motivation and the direct link between what you do and what, the results, you can see it much more tangibly, and especially in a sales role. Yeah. So I think then I did start to get a lot more motivated and a lot more focused. And one of the things that's been consistent throughout my career is I think I've been lucky enough to have lots of opportunities. I say lucky. I remember another piece of advice I got from one leader. I said, I feel really lucky I got this job. He said, you create your own luck. And I was like, do you? He said, yeah, it's a combination. The way he phrased it was it's a combination of hard work, preparation, and opportunity. And I think he's absolutely right. I would say it's hard work and results, preparation and opportunity. But I think you do create a bit of your own luck.
100%. Completely agree with that, because I've needed some along the way. So how long did you stay in Singapore? You stayed in Singapore quite a while, right?
Yeah, I moved there in 2002, and then I stayed with Reuters for a couple of years, and I got approached about a role at Amex. And so they moved Joe and I to Bangkok because they asked me to go and run a few markets, but based in Bangkok. So we went there for like 9 months, then we went back to Singapore. So in total, I was there about 8 years.
So how did the Was the product that you were working on, or be it in sales, but at Reuters, was that anything to do with payments, or was it Amex? They saw you as a person?
It was through a friend. He'd been someone I got to know really well, great friend, and he'd been doing a role in Singapore for Amex, and they basically divided his role into 4.
Okay.
They found 3 people who were really good and well qualified for the job, and I think they really struggled to find somebody for them.
You can take a punt on the 4th.
I think they really struggled, and actually, I joke about it, but he made an introduction to the hiring leader. It was quite an informal interview process, and eventually I got an offer, and they said, we'd like you to move to Bangkok. And this was, the person that said to me about, I said I felt very lucky. Yeah. And I remember asking him, I was like, it didn't feel like that structured an interview process or anything. He said, you could show up in an interview, you could have prepared some really good answers, you could have made everything up. He said, or I could take a recommendation from someone I've known for years who's done the job, knows you intimately and knows you really well. He goes, I'll take that 10 times out of 10 because he's putting his own reputation on the line to recommend you for the role as well. So.
Have you seen just a little bit of a tangent? Have you seen, because for a long time it was, people say it's not what you know, it's who you know, blah, 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 blah. But like referrals for jobs are always the best thing. Have you seen that like HR functions and people functions have restricted some of that because of criteria that's put on, or is it still?
No,
prominent?
I think there's a lot of very needed structure and discipline put into recruiting processes in large organisations. Making sure that you're opening up the net wide enough, you're getting the diversity of candidates that you should be doing, giving internal people opportunity and external. I still think, we have referral programs where we incent people to. It's the best way to get talent. Yeah, it really is. The business, the people, you're putting your own neck on the line. Like, it's a great way. And it's funny, you come back to that sort of referral network. That's one of the things when I was growing up. I didn't have that. I went to, not the best school. I didn't have the old boys network. My dad couldn't open doors for me from that perspective. He could give me the opportunity to go and get educated. But I think that's one of the things I've realised. I've been very fortunate because of where I've been and moved around. I've got an amazing network of great people that I can reach out to. And I'll use that to help other people if I can. If I know someone that's looking for a role and, refer them around, and I'll always take the time to try and do that.
As you should. Pay it forward.
Exactly.
So what was your title when you joined Amex?
I was
roughly
Director of Account Development, and I was 26 years old.
So I ask everyone that comes on here, when is the moment where you look at the business card and you're like, come on? Was it that?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was American Express, first of all, great brand. I was 26. I was living in Bangkok. I was a sales director. Yeah. I had 9 direct reports in 3 countries. And I had a driver and a car that drove me to the office.
I bet Joe was like, picked a good one here.
Well, that's a sore point, because actually Jo, she had a great job at an international school in Singapore, and she still tells me to this day that she was earning more money than I was when we met, and she's absolutely right. She was more motivated than me when we met, but and she's still very motivated. But because we moved to Thailand and then we moved quickly back, actually I think I caused her quite a lot of distress around her jobs and all that sort of stuff. But we do look back sometimes and think, we were just the 2 of us. We lived in Bangkok. We were traveling all over Asia at the weekends. It was like the quality of life that we had there was unbelievable. So that was the wow moment. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So, but that takes you into payments.
Yes.
Right, which is the rest of your career has largely been payments. Did you fall? It sounds like a really of it, but did you fall in love with did you get excited by what payments is and that industry?
Yeah, I did. I don't think I realised it at the time, because I actually, if I did 10 years at Amex and I went to PayPal and then I joined Thomson Reuters, and so there was about a 6-year period where I wasn't really in payments. I was around the periphery of financial markets and market data and all that sort of stuff, but I was kind of out of payments. And I'd forgotten until I came back to Visa. I hadn't forgotten. I'd realised actually how much I love the complexity of payments. I think one of the things that I really enjoy is just that intellectual stimulation. And payments is really complex, especially with what's happening around the world now with, governments and sovereignty and, all of that. It's a really complex problem to solve at super scale.
Did you find throughout Amex, because when you left Amex, what was your title?
I was a vice president and general manager.
Epic. Congratulations. That journey there, you'd have left knowing infinitely more about payments. But at the start, because you're in a commercial role, you never end up getting that close to the detail of it until you start leading it. Did you find that over that 10 years, it all changed?
I think so. Because I started in commercial sales leadership roles. Then I moved into more general management, and then I was responsible for building businesses, whether it's strategy, products, and all that kind of stuff. I liked the way that the role changed, the complexity that came with that. I think the fact that I spent time in sales and cutting my teeth close to the customer, I always bring that customer perspective into building product.
Well, they're essential, right? If you don't have those, then you don't have a business.
Yeah.
So then when you go to PayPal, so when was it you went to PayPal? Because PayPal's a fascinating business and it's amazing, but it's changed so much over the years. What part of PayPal did you join on its journey?
Yeah, I joined them in 2013
Yeah.
as the country manager for, it was like North Asia, but I didn't have China, so it was Hong Kong.
I love that. I think it was like North Asia.
I can't tell it was North Asia, but it wasn't China. It was Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea and Macau, but it was largely a cross-border business.
Yeah.
It was a lot of cross-border merchants, and it was still part of eBay at the time.
Oh yeah, of course.
Interesting business. I think, I'd been a PayPal user and thought it was a great. And for me, when I decided to leave Amex, they were offering me different roles. It was a point where there was a lot happening in the market, and the roles that were on the table weren't super exciting. They were more of the same. And I just thought I might do something different. And I had a few different options, but I took the PayPal one because I actually thought they were in a digital commerce, service a completely different customer set to Amex, where it was largely affluent and corporate. And I got in there and I realised actually it felt like some of the things were stuck together a little bit with, elastic.
In a lot of businesses, right?
Yeah, elastic bands and sellotape. But the growth had been phenomenal.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about e-commerce.
Because if you've got from a sales grounding, like e-commerce is a really good place to be for your intellectual curiosity because of the proximity to customer.
Yeah.
So that must have been versus, like you say, Amex, PayPal. That must have been a really exciting change.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. Most of my career has been B2B. And if you think about it, and the interesting thing with PayPal, it was B2B, but you were very close to businesses that were trying to serve consumers and address consumer demand.
Yeah, SMBs and whatever.
And but working with them and figuring out what it is that can change the success of a business in e-commerce, like where is your pay button, how big is your pay button, how many clicks to go through a checkout flow. I just learned so much about digital in that whole experience. It was great.
The structure of a product display page. And
and scrolling, top above the fold and all that kind of stuff.
It's probably about 2013, 2014, the first time that I wore those goggles that showed where your eyes were on a page.
Tracking on a page.
Help you, amazing.
And it was little things which now I look back on, but it was amazing that could change, the revenue trajectory for business. Like when you clicked on the PayPal checkout, if you were going to use your card through that, the tray of card art that appeared in there. So if you were dealing with a consumer in France, it was like carte bancaire that you needed in there rather than Visa, Master, Amex, and whatever. Yeah. That could change the revenue for a customer and whether success or whether somebody went through. Amazing stuff.
I remember a lot of, for a while, people like Marks and Spencer were trying to hire people from the gambling companies because the volume, the compound impact of small changes in things like gambling were things that they needed to put into e-com.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So you're still in Asia at PayPal. How long are you at PayPal?
Just a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a strange one. I was in Hong Kong, took that job. It was a big P&L relative to what I'd done. Interesting. And I got a call from a headhunter. And I was I know. I was about 9 months in. I remember they said, "Hey, we got this role. It's managing director role," and it was Thomson Reuters for North Asia. Bigger P&L, bigger people role. And I just I look again. I think at the time it was kind of it was the title, it was the remit, it was the bigger business. Yeah, interesting business. And it was funny. It was Thomson Reuters, which was an evolution of the business I'd worked for before. And I think when I got the offer, because I spoke to them, it was actually a very quick process, and I met with some of their senior leaders and CEO of the business at the time, and I got the offer, and I still was undecided whether I was going to do it. Yeah. But then there was just a few things I think that for me, from a sort of cultural fit perspective in PayPal, I realised it wasn't the place where I was going to thrive. Yeah. And so I took the role and left, and that was a really difficult decision.
I bet. Because also, as your career's going along, there's also your life going on as well. So there's so many things to consider. When you because from Thomson Reuters it was Refinitiv, right? So you were part of that
It
whole
was
piece.
same business. I always say it's same business, three parents. So it was Thomson Reuters, and then the financial and risk business got spun out as Refinitiv, taken out big leverage buyout with Blackstone, and then that got sold onto London Stock Exchange.
So within Thomson Reuters, were you in the risk and compliance world at all, or is that what happened?
No, so I started in. I was running the financial and risk business, which included the risk portfolio.
Okay.
But that was, I was the, I guess, lead of the business. So I had the go-to-market teams and that sort of stuff. My teams were selling all that product. Yeah. And then that was 3 years doing that role. And then they were looking for a new role, and it was global head of digital identity, newly created role in the risk business. Yeah. And I was at a point, I'd done 3 years, I was ready for a change. I actually had been approached about something externally. It was a CEO role of a payments business. I don't know many people know that at the time. And so I was sort of weighing up, should I go and do that? But I was really interested in this digital identity piece. And because as I looked at it and I thought about the space, and it was something that was somewhat new to me, I could just see how that was intersecting with back into payments again. It's like, that sounds interesting. Go and build something completely new. And I got offered that role. And so I took that role, and that was what moved us to New York.
Oh, was it?
So I was in Hong Kong with the previous one, and they wanted it in either New York or London. And Joe and I, when we got married, we basically agreed we were never living in the UK. I was okay with that. Yeah. But it was like, let's go. Should we go to New York? And yes, we decided to go to New York.
So it was Refinitiv in New York, or the last part of the Thomson Reuters?
I think it started as Thomson Reuters.
Yeah.
And then I think it was very soon after it became Refinitiv. I can't remember the timing on the date on that, but it was around that time.
So this digital identity, and I part of why I love the industry that we, I suppose, work in, is the customer obsession that you have to have within this space. So you've got that the intellectual curiosity again, but in a new space. Yeah. How did you? Because your career's just gone like this, and when you're doing that, you're almost holding on for dear life at certain points. Now you're in this bigger role in an industry where you're not like an SME, really. So you're actually just a business leader at this point that's learning. How did you go about crossing that gap?
I think I was a business case leader at that point. I think it was a piece of paper, a good idea, a commitment to go after it. Yeah. And I went from a team of 300 to a team of me. And that was actually quite nice for a little period of time. And then I realised there's no way I could do this on my own. So I managed to get together a small team. I think it took me back to some of the stuff I'd done at Amex, where it was, building a new business like I did in India. Yep. It was like, okay, just let's step back here. I go back to if you're a good salesperson, you know what your target is. You've kind of written out in the back of your notebook what you need to do for the year, and you keep moving it around until you get to it. Yeah. I think when you go and start a new business, it's somewhat the same. It's like, look, let's map out the market and the opportunity. Let's be clear about where we're going to go and play. Let's understand our right to win and why we think we can do this better than anybody else, and then sort of build out the plan. So that job was really lay out the business plan as part of a risk intelligence business, where I think we realised we had the right to play. Yeah. And we had clients that were using us for KYC and screening, but it was like identity is a big piece of this. So we felt we had the right to play. So it was build a business plan, go and look, and we were looking at acquisition. And that was actually, so it was Thomson Reuters. We started looking at acquisitions, and all of a sudden this Blackstone Refinitiv thing happened, and you're not really going to go and buy something while you're being traded as well. So it was a really interesting time. We ended up going and doing partnerships to go and get product out the door. Yeah,
because that's back to basics entrepreneurial approach. I think you just didn't have a right to play in the university books world, right? So actually, all these core principles. Do you find in what you're doing today, and this is just for my curiosity, do you get caught up in the scale of it and find yourself going, actually, let's go back to we call it brilliant basics in our business, right? Like, what are the core fundamentals? Because there's two things that overlay there that must be really hard to work out, because you've got all this noise of the big machine, but then you've also got just the fundamentals that work. How do you navigate that?
I think you do go back, and it's funny. I was talking to a friend not so long ago. Someone I've worked with over the years, become a friend and a bit of a mentor, like a sounding board for stuff. I said, I don't know if it's a sign of getting old, but you actually realise that some of the things you've tried before, they work, and that it's like repeat the playbook, and it's a different scale. It's I find I'm still drawing on things that I did 10 years ago, 15 years ago on a much smaller scale. But I think you're right. It's going back to the basics. It's easy to forget about that when you're in a big business and you've got this amazing machine that has momentum, and you've got scaled Salesforce and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, and we're going through this, when you launch new products and when you've got these growth targets that we have and we've committed to the street, we're going to grow this business at 20% plus the next few years. It's a big business. That's a lot of revenue you have to bring through. You won't do that unless you go back and you look at product fit, product market fit, right to win, distribution, commercials. It's the basics of any good business. But trying to make sure you do that, but then you still move at pace and that you can make decisions quickly. You don't get caught up in analysis paralysis, which is easy to do. So I think it's always about looking at what you're doing, how you're doing it. I remember one of the things I remember at PayPal, actually, the manager that I had there, I remember him saying, every 90 days, you need to look at what you're doing and how you're doing it. If it's the same as it was 90 days ago, you're doing something wrong. And I remember at the time going, what? But it was if you're going to move at pace, if you're still doing things the same way as you were and you haven't made a change, then you're not moving fast enough. And actually it's one of the things I've talked to my leadership team about. Given the pace of growth in this business, you think about a compound 20% growth rate. Yeah. You can't. It's insanity to think that you can double the size of this business in 3 years if you're going to do the same things the same way. So I'm putting pressure on myself. I'm asking my team to do the same. Like, when you do your quarterly check-in, ask that question. Are you doing the same thing as you were the same way?
Because it's really easy not to, because you've got the protection of the machine.
Yeah.
But then when you look back after 4 of those 90-day periods, you're like, oh dear, we wasted one of those.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be that, that decision is I need to stop doing something, because that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really good question. I actually look back on that piece of advice and go, that was a really smart, piece of advice.
Yeah, that is smart. So you go Thomson Reuters, Refinitiv, LSEG. I'm sure there's a movie in that journey. But the bit that I'm interested in is, at the end of LSEG, why Visa?
Yeah, so as I say, same business, 3 parents. It was amazing. I mean, that was an amazing period. The people I worked with there, I think you had Av on here, who I worked with there. Great people that I worked with, really good team, great business, great reputation. I enjoyed it, and I loved the space, the risk. It's funny because when I was in the Thomson Reuters role in Hong Kong, I was dealing with market data and, market data heads and traders and stuff. And I also had the risk bit. And the thing I've found in the risk and identity and fraud space, you're generally working with genuinely nice people. They get up in the morning with a passion and a purpose, which is to really stop bad things happening. So I love that. I love that space. And again, I was at a point where I decided I was going to start to think about other opportunities the year that I joined Visa. And I got a call from a headhunter again. So I shouldn't say headhunter, recruiter, because the lady that I worked with was brilliant.
Yeah.
And they said, Visa are looking to meet people. They're thinking about, changes and opportunities. But it was a really strange one because it wasn't a clearly defined role at the time.
Was it not a defined role because identity in itself hadn't emerged
no,
as a vertical?
It was more, I think there was going to be changes in some of the, leadership roles. And they were just, I think at the time, meeting some people out there from all sorts of different backgrounds. And would you be willing to have a conversation or some conversations? And again, that was the Visa payments, the lights started blinking.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That could be interesting.
Because when you look at it, like being at Visa and working in fraud and identity is the perfect place for you, given the history that we've just gone through.
It was a Visa piece, and then I had some conversations. I really enjoyed the people I met with through that process, and they were just sort of more conversations. Again, my understanding my domain expertise in the risk and identity and fraud space, and learning more about the business, and really pushing into the experience that I had working in a matrix organization, all that stuff. It was really good. I enjoyed the conversation, and then it ended up with an offer to go into the risk and identity business, where there was a new leader that was coming in to work alongside her and do strategy and operations.
Was there any time within that? Because prior to the Reuters, Refinitiv, LSEG, it was only at Reuters that you really started to focus on risk and identity and compliance and that sort of space. So you just referred to yourself to a certain extent when you got to Visa as having domain expertise. Did you ever question that? Because it had just been within one area. And I'm not meaning to say that you didn't know.
At that point, I'd probably spent 5 or 6 years in the domain. And then I'd also, I'd run issuing businesses. So I'd had to use risk
big part
products
of
and
it.
stuff.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'd been in prepaid where the AML risk side of that was complex. So I guess I always felt like, and I wrote the Beginner's Guide to Money Laundering at university. So I felt like I had some domain expertise. And
But at the scale of Visa, you question everything. When you go into a big role in a business like that, you do naturally question things, right?
100%. I got that job and I was, again, to me, it was like, wow, I get to go back into payments with the scale of Visa and I get to stay in this space that I absolutely love. It's the two things coming. And there's no bigger platform in the world to do that. I was like, this is awesome. So that was a very easy decision.
But there's got to be like a bit of a but, like, whoa.
Yeah, walking in the door to Visa, where we've got amazingly smart people, deep expertise, deep subject matter expertise, people far more expertise in their domain than I will ever hope to have. And you walk in the door and you kind of think, ooh, this is going to be a test. And I think, especially as you get more senior in your career, the bigger the role that you walk into, there's always that fear that you're walking into this finely tuned machine where if you touch anything, it can only go down. I always think about it like a plane just cruising along. You're like, if I touch this, it's going to go like this. But I think it was funny. I was probably 2 months into Visa, maybe 2.5 months, which is early days, learning just a huge amount, just head spinning.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to Joe, I'm really comfortable here. And
that's lovely.
But what I meant by that wasn't I didn't think it was a bad thing. I just felt culturally very comfortable. I love the culture. I love the values. I was really inspired by the people that I was meeting and just the way that they were interacting. So I love that. There wasn't a lot of politics. And I also felt that there was space for me to add value quite quickly in the role. So that made me feel like, okay.
What do you, because like the comparison I can make is in sports teams where I've gone into a sports team and I've either been like, I fit here, and I play brilliantly as a result, or I don't, and it all feels a bit like, what do you think it was about Visa? Was it the people that you were closest to? Like, what was it that made you have that feeling? Because it's a massive business, but what you're talking about is like your part of the business and how you felt
whole bit. Honestly, it was the whole bit. I just think it's, a big part of it's the people.
Yeah.
We've just got brilliant people, good values. Like there's a big focus at Visa on leadership principles and values. It's genuine. So I like that. I think the values that the company stands for externally, I was really just had a good affinity to that.
Yeah.
It was people, culture, values, opportunity, the things that we were trying to change internally, like the recognition that this is a business that's done really well, but there's some things that we need to change. And so there was that tone from the top around where we need to focus and what we need to do differently. And that created opportunities for new people coming in. There were some new people. I mean, our growth, I think when I joined, 50% of the company had joined within the last 3 years because of the growth that we'd had.
And how many people work at Visa?
I think we're about 36,000 now.
See, 50% when it's like a 30-person company is very different.
Yeah. I mean, we'd added, 12,000 people, I think, in 3 years.
To retain a culture when you've added that many people is a massive achievement.
And it's been, the culture's been changing. We've been, I think, becoming a more performance-oriented organisation, which I actually like as well.
Yeah.
But not losing the good parts of the culture as well. So I just really, and again, to this day, I love what I do and where I do it.
And that concludes another episode of Not What I Expected. I hope you loved that as much as I loved recording it. If you like it, let us know. If you don't, tell us how you think it could be better. Thanks and see you again.